is because they don't want this information getting out. Now, with what took place in Congress this week, with Mellon and Avi Loeb and Lue making it clear that they want your billions of dollars for a UFO defense office, and they want to be in charge of the research. Now it's getting very clear that the things I've been talking about and warning about in relation to that group are being realized or being activated or ratified. And that's why this whole phony disclosure thing going on in Congress on the UFO side needs to be exposed, and exposed pretty hard. Or else it's going to, these people are just going to run away with the whole show. So it's very important to do that, and to do it in an intelligent fashion with the facts. And that's what we're going to do here tonight. I'm going to open with some of that, actually, as we get into it. Before I go any further, you're up, Miss Olivia.
DA wants to know, what feedback did DJ get back from the Luna people?
Well, it's problematic because I think that everyone around that congressional hearing and committee thinks they have to tiptoe around the forces that are involved. My single advice piece to Burchett and Luna is very clear, straight up. And I sent a letter to Speaker Johnson in relation to this over a year ago now. Just don't include the CIA counterintelligence wing in terms of influencing the committee as witnesses, etc. Instead, that's all we've seen. Now, they're engaging in some very interesting tactics as well. I'm going to point some of these out, and I'm going to do this before I get into some of the revelations about Trump and Trump talking about his uncle this week, which was quite interesting. But here's some of the tactics right off the bat. So these hearings were coming up, and Avi Loeb and Elizondo came out, and he was talking about how they needed these billions of dollars. Now, Loeb here asked the Congress, these are congressional briefings, straight up. He asked them for $1 billion. Okay, this is ridiculous. Don't give him a dime. Those are all, he comes out of Talpiot, which is Israeli CIA, no way. And Lue is pure CIA. Those people don't want UFO transparency at all. They want the money for a UFO defense office, then they want to launch emergency programs and emergency powers through a Sky event around this. Keep them away from the U.S. purse strings. That's one. Two, Lue supposedly was all excited about this photo of a UFO and presenting it to Congress and all that. The photo got debunked very quickly. Now, it got debunked so quickly that either Lue was testing the intelligence of the American public, or he knew it was going to be debunked. And he came out with a, mea culpa thing. I didn't know, but I take responsibility when I'm wrong and such. So that was a big phony fake out. And I did this for Lue. I fixed the image for him just so we know what we're talking about here. That's it, Lue. Let's go straight to the CIA, DIA background and those interests that you are promoting there. It's not going to happen. Now, this is the interesting thing, that I found out that the people who are guiding the Luna task force around the UFO thing are Lue and Grush and Mellon. And I mean, those are the people you're trying to expose, and they're running the committee. So it's like the wolves, running the chicken coop. Now, then right around all of this, and there were some videos that came out that were supposed to promote all this. Suddenly, Chris Mellon's Wikipedia page has been deleted. Oh my God. Billionaire. Somebody protect that billionaire. His Wikipedia page got deleted. Help. Well, all of these UFO accounts, which, make up the Dum-Dum Brigade in the independent media, were all like, save Chris. He's been such a brave hero. Look, that is the mayor of Area 51, self-described. Okay. And he ruled over Area 51 for a decade, all the secrecy. In 2016, he gave the comment, the government's not hiding anything. There are no UFOs. Shut up and go away. 2017, with the launch of TTSA and the CIA effort, he says, UFOs are real, and that government's hiding it. They need to give it to us. But he's a DOD billionaire official. So, he is the government, Lue's the government and all that. This week, in relation to all this, now they have this Pentagon whistleblower, and I love this. This is for a headline. Okay, this is a regular Washington Post headline. Pentagon whistleblower fears execution, revealing bombshell UFO program secretly studying alien tech. It turned out what he had actually revealed was a video game inside the military that they had developed for like a war game scenario. So he's going to get executed over that? I don't think so. But, this is the showpiece going on. This is the TMZ version of the UFO file. You cannot fall for the TMZ version of the UFO file. Look, the TMZ will do anything for money. Okay, they had like a butt cam show with what is her name, Kardashian, right? And so they'll do anything for money. Okay, so when they have Corbell on there, that's not like Corbell's information is real. That just means he's a grifter, and they want to sensationalize the UFO file. There are probably built-in incentives to do that as well. So this guy who came out, Matthew Brown. This is what they had to say about him. The whistleblower behind the stunning report submitted to Congress exposing what he claims is a secret Pentagon program video game. Tracking, they don't say that, I do, based on my own research. Tracking unidentified anomalous phenomena has now revealed his identity and says he fears for his future. And speaking out, he's going to get executed for a video game. Matthew Brown is a former U.S. national security official. Now, this is weird, too, because they keep saying this. He's a U.S. national security official. Well, what's his title? I'm a national security official. I mean, do you have a title? What is that? So what is your actual title, Brown? Who previously served, he was a policy advisor and a technical advisor for the Office of Undersecretary. So everything out of that OUSD office, like Elizondo and all the rest, it seems like there's a kind of a mill in there that churns these guys out. He publicly identified himself as the whistleblower in the Knapp Corbell sideshow freak show. So that's what they're pulling there. And there we have another UFO whistleblower. They'll probably haul this guy before Congress, and he'll be like, my life is in danger. Now look, protecting real whistleblowers should be the job of Congress, and it should be the job of the military, et cetera. Who are you protecting them from? You're protecting them from the intelligence community who use that kind of wet work, assassination, as part of the X-Protect program. So if you're protecting them, then you're going to protect them from those people, right? But if you are having CIA people put them out, and you have Elizondo and Mellon and all these CIA, DIA people, those are the same people you're supposed to be protecting them from in the first place. So these obviously aren't legitimate whistleblowers because they're the ones launching the false whistleblowers. I've had my own experience talking to some of these people, as we know, and what came out of that was what? That Chris Mellon was running these people, and that he got very, very upset when anything stepped out of line like that, like when Grush spoke to me, and he was terrified that Grush was going to go on my show and talk. That's the ultimate no-no. And, this has been going around, too, because these people don't want to get the phone call with Chris Mellon on the other end of the line saying, why would you do that? Why would you promote him? And, don't ever mention him. And this is going around in that whole field because they borrow a lot from the information that we present on this show. I mean, even Richard Dolan did a show on Douglas Caddy. This is the most ridiculous thing in the world. This has been happening all week. He does the whole show. But Douglas Caddy, as you'll know, who's the Watergate lawyer who came out on my show and did 6 episodes exposing that E. Howard Hunt said that JFK was assassinated over the UFO file. Dolan does an episode, not an interview, but an episode with somebody else where he just talks about all this stuff about Caddy, and it's such a revelation, all this stuff. Look, we put that information out years ago. I sent it to Dolan, actually, back in the day.
What year did you first interview him?
I interviewed Caddy in 2015.
Wow.
Deal with that.
A decade.
It's a long time ago. And but he's been on the show all the way through 2021, and we've done specials with him, and he's the one who helped me launch the Robert Merritt intel on the inside, because he was interviewing Merritt and things. Merritt's story got really out of hand. It went from Watergate to Area 51. And then we did all those shows with Robert Merritt before he passed away. So there's a long trail there. Now, how can you be Dolan? How can you be a historian and not know that we've done all the work with getting Caddy out
I'm
to the
sure
public.
he knows.
And they dropped the ball. They didn't do anything. They wanted to go kiss the butt of Mellon and Elizondo because they thought they were going to get money and shows and all this nonsense. So we really need a conversation in the UFO field, the independent media. This is all junk. You're getting spoon-fed the worst junk, and it's getting progressively worse and progressively embarrassing. And those people are getting rewarded by going to Congress and asking for all this money, and those people are sitting there like, oh yeah, it's true. And Eric Burleson is sitting there. He's like, I just hired David Grush as my technical advisor on UAP, and Lue's like, I'm going to get that UAP czar job. Look, these are the worst people. If you want to have a UAP czar, get somebody legitimate. Do not go to the CIA for these people. Now, more on this thing with Mellon pretending that his Wikipedia page got pulled down. So they go to Chris Cuomo over at News Nation. Now, Chris Cuomo, remember, is now at News Nation pretending to be independent media and all this stuff. But he's the sleazy brother of Andrew Cuomo, who had his own show on CNN and constantly pumped up the vaccine, said, if you don't take your vaccine, you're bad and all that stuff. But now he's a freedom fighter, and he's fighting for the freedom of Chris Mellon, the billionaire, and his Wikipedia page getting taken down. Coordinated attempts are underway to delete the Wikipedia pages of Christopher Mellon, among others. We stand in solidarity with them against the censorship. Just yesterday, Mellon told Chris Cuomo on the Cuomo Show all about this. And the people who are putting this out are the UAP Disclosure Fund, run by Lue Elizondo. Mm-hmm. So they want your UAP disclosure money, right? So, this is what they're doing, and they're playing the media. Look, Mellon's page didn't get pulled down by anybody. And if it did, all he has to do is reach into the billions of his pockets, send somebody over to Wikipedia, and plug some other info in there to put his page back up. This is ridiculous. This is the biggest non-story I have ever seen. And yet all of those outlets on the UFO side were running this up the flagpole. So that's a marketing op, and it's all in setup for this May 12th hearing that's going on with Luna and all the rest of it. And I was so in favor of this when they first talked about doing it. They said, we're going to have a JFK hearing, which they did. It didn't go so well. And then they said, we have this other one, which is this UAP hearing. Don't worry, it's a huge thing, May 12th. And I thought, well, maybe they're going to do something. They even talk tough, like, we don't just want to hear whistleblowers. Well, now all the CIA people are running it. It's gone. I mean, that thing is gone, May 12th. And I'm going to have a very, very major thing to say about that. I'm going to save it. I won't say it in this show, but something very major about that. And, it's a disgrace because these people have robbed you of the ability for them to be cross-examined by responsible journalists. So you don't get the truth because these people don't ask them any tough questions. They just talk about, oh, how does it feel to be such a hero and a legend? Do you feel more like a hero or a legend? And so, when you get into that end of the space, that is all a big stroking space, and somebody's telling them in the background, don't worry, the UAP money is going in, just launch this thing, please, get us out the door. Elizondo's followed it up so many times. Now, I think what's happening here is they're trying to use the momentum of some of the records coming out around the JFK, RFK side to promote this. This is what I'm seeing. So the way to cut off an effort like that is just educate the public. So if they get any tough questions, if they were to go on a real show, and it's sad because even at all levels, even shows that I like don't ask real questions around this. You have guys like Tucker and Joe Rogan and stuff. They do not ask the right questions. And they have people sitting there like Avi Loeb, and they have people sitting there like Elizondo, and they let them just spew this intel nonsense. If they had somebody who was sitting there who understood what the op is about, who understood how the CIA counterintelligence effort works, then those people would be exposed and none of this would be going on. Instead, you get these other people who pretend to be interested in the disclosure or don't know any better, and they are giving them huge platforms to talk about these things. Well, the problem is that they're not giving you the truth. And I'm telling you, that process is getting worse. And if it's not exposed, and if it's not cut off and brought into there's a very small modicum of voices out there. But this lone outpost of dark journalist, here, what I can tell you is this, and I want this to stick for those people that are listening. This one lone outpost armed with the truth can bring down the entire UFO operation. This is the nature of the thing. All you need is one man armed with the truth. Now, there are other voices out there who are against this kind of play on disclosure. Guys like the Black Vault, for example. He did a very important little soliloquy on this yesterday, saying, I can't believe what's going on here with the manipulation, the Corbell thing with this guy Brown and the phony Immaculate Constellation. So for people who have a brain and for people who have any kind of discernment, this thing has reached a real boiling point and they can see it. Now, on the other end, these people who need to push it over the top and they need to get, Avi Loeb needs those billions, Lue needs the UFO Defense Fund and all this other stuff. I mean, this is what's going on. So that effort needs to be stopped. And the way it needs to be stopped is with very responsible questioning of those people. Those people need to be cross-examined, not pampered. And they're not whistleblowers, they're CIA agents. Okay, let's get real. And, the minute you get real on this whole thing, that whole thing starts to fall apart. And I guarantee you, they'll probably start canceling some of those hearings, or maybe they would reformat them with real people. That's what you want to see. As a matter of fact, it's interesting. The person who canceled out of these SCIF hearings, I thought this was funny, which they were going to have all these UFO SCIF hearings, and it was going to be Grush and Mellon with Luna, and who the hell else was in there? Oh, with Lue as well. And then Lue made a statement that Grush pulled out. So Grush he couldn't make it. He didn't want to do it for some reason. He didn't want to be under oath. He didn't necessarily want to go along with this. So I think that shows a huge, huge split. And I'm telling you, you're going to hear a lot about it from this channel going forward, because the false UFO threat being launched by the intel community on the public and the Congress going along with it, along with these very vacant podcaster and the whole space of the independent media promoting it, is bad news. And we need the real thing, the real UFO file, and we need to throw out the counterintelligence piece for a fact. Okay, now on to Trump's very, very interesting comments. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show. Whew! X Series 197. This is Tesla, Trump, and the 2i Stone. Exotic technology, the UFO file. They're all in there. Tonight, we're going to be giving you some very, very deep information, and we're going to be taking your questions as well. Before I go any further, what do you got out there?
Joyanne Dwyer says, I saw the show with Dolan talking about Caddy. He made it sound like it was his discovery. Needless to say, I was yelling at my laptop in protest.
Yes. Well, you see this with Jesse Michaels too, and they're under instructions because they can't. If you mention Dark Journalist in those circles, Chris Mellon will call you up and he will say, "Why are you doing this?" So this is the nature of that problem. But the plagiarism, if they were doing that for anybody's stuff, establishing that kind of plagiarism. Look, plagiarism can get you thrown out of school. It can get you thrown out of a job. You can, if you're a presidential candidate and you plagiarize speeches, you get thrown out. If you're a university president, what they do is they go back and they find your papers where you plagiarize things and they throw you out. Plagiarism is a big deal. But in this space where Peter Thiel funds Jesse Michaels, and Jesse Michaels sits down literally on this show and just writes things down and spews them out as fast as he can on his show the next week with all the weird video vomit editing that he does. But that whole thing, the way that I look at it is those people are under instructions. And Peter Thiel in particular, we're talking about very, very shady stuff. I mean, Palantir, how shady do you want to get in this field? And I don't think that somebody like Thiel is as much of a demagogue as somebody like Soros, for example. But, how shady do you want this field to get? Do you really want Peter Thiel's money to run the UFO disclosure movement? I don't think so. And if you just had somebody, a lot of people are probably looking for collaborations because there's big money involved and all the rest. And they're like, hey, he's interested in UFOs. Well, the guy that they have plagiarizing so much of my stuff on his show he's not just an investigator. He's a hedge fund manager for Thiel. So, this is we've gone into very, very sketchy territory. And it's very interesting because one of the things that he was trying to do that he was so frustrated about is he was talking about how he was trying to get a 150 million, that's million with an M, $150 million deal from Peter Thiel to this very same character that they rolled out on Joe Rogan, and that's Hal Puthoff, who's been around doing this stuff. He's worked for the CIA for 50 years. He's a physicist, all the rest of it. He was part of the remote viewing program. Great, and we have the guy who really did a great job in that, Russell Targ. And as soon as he realized how much the CIA were playing very dirty tricks with the whole thing, he departed and went on to do a real psychic investigation career. And, so all that stuff and all the things that they were doing with the remote viewing program were important. But Puthoff has always been that dodgy character working with the CIA in the middle of all this. So, it's the last voice of reason when it comes to the UFO file. And so this very same plagiarizer guy was talking about how he was trying to hook up this deal for $150 million. So you have, think about this. This is supposed to be like independent media, right? $150 million they want to get for Hal Puthoff through Peter Thiel's money. And then $1 billion, that's what's being asked for by Avi Loeb, who runs the little astrophysicist lab about 5 minutes from here. And Loeb with our friend Lue are trying to get these billions, and the Congress people are sitting up there like puppies, getting ready to give those people that kind of money. So, you can see how important this becomes, because by the time you get to the hearings, it's all going to be off the table. As soon as that kind of money gets involved, you're not going to get to any truth. It's just going to be whatever promotes that particular narrative. And remember, the root of this is Chris Mellon's UFO threat narrative to create emergency powers for a shadowy group hanging out there. This is the same guy who ran Area 51. It's the same crowd. Make no mistake about it. We've gone to great lengths to expose Chris Mellon on this show. There's a reason for that. And we've interviewed his cousin, John Warner, of course, the fourth, and he's given us all kinds of information about the shady aspects of what Mellon is doing here. So the whole group around this, if you're talking about genuine UFO disclosure, come on, wake up. And, is this just going to become like PAC money in the UFO field, or do you want the real truth? Are these real shows, or are these commercials for some shadowy group back there trying to create a sky event emergency? It's a legitimate question. The odds of what we're saying here coming to pass get more and more, obvious as time passes. So you have to get real on that. If you're in any kind of, if you want to be genuine about it. Now, it's different if you just want to be in an entertainment game, whatever. But the idea of getting played through Congress for billions of dollars for these sketchy characters, that's very dangerous. And including it and attaching it to the National Defense Authorization Act, that means if you don't pass that National Defense Authorization Act, it holds up $1 trillion in defense funding. So it creates this amazing pressure on the inside. So what they're trying to do, all that activity around Senate and the Congress, where they sit there with Luna and all these other people, what they're engaging in and what the Congress and the Senate needs to wake up to is they're trying to get those people to attach their UFO defense office, which they already did with Arrow, but they're trying to go much further this time. They're trying to attach it to the National Defense Authorization Act. Once you get that into NDAA, you can't get it out. It's just like the 9/11 emergency. They attach that in, and if you try to hold it up, they say, oh, you're holding up $1 trillion in defense spending. So we have to get, let's talk about what we're actually talking about here, which is they're trying to get tremendous amounts of money and centralization of power by using this one issue. So that's what we're talking about, and that's why we take the extra time to explain it to the audience. Everyone, you're watching the Dark Journalist Show deep here on X197 before we even got to the topic of Tesla, Trump, and the Two Eyes Stone. This is going to run deep, and we're going to take your questions in part two here in the second hour. What do we got, Miss Olivia?
Free Wheezy says they're forced to speed up their timeline because of this show.
I think there's no doubt that this show has sent ripples. And this is the funny thing, because this is the same thing why they try to shut down so much communications during COVID. Because if you can get a thoughtful group, like what we do, our interaction with the ideas room, and when we all engage in these ideas, it is it's a sense, it's a ripple, it's a vibration, it is a coming together. And when you get that, these people over here get very, very nervous, because they're trying to launch something else, and they're like, they're thinking quantum. They're thinking on a very large scale. But if they see something coming up that cuts right to the core, it's almost like that scene in Star Wars where they're like, well, we've actually analyzed the Death Star, and there is a danger. There's a vulnerability there in the danger of the Death Star. The rebels could get at us through this one thing. And this is, I think, the nature of it. But beyond all that, look, you want something honest. When it comes to Congress, these issues have been shrouded in mystery for so long. Whether you're talking about the JFK assassination and the fact that the CIA was behind it, or whether you're talking about UFO disclosure and the fact that the CIA and other groups have hidden it, including the Ex-Protect group inside of the government, of the national security state, how are you ever going to get to the truth if those people run your committees? It's just such the most obvious question. It would be like, trying to get oil companies or pharmaceutical companies investigated by having pharmaceutical and oil executives investigate them. It's not the way to do it. And it's very obvious that you need a civilian panel working with the Congress on this, and they can select experts. Because if you have the intel people do it, they're going to whitewash it. That's how you get situations where the JFK records were whitewashed and the shenanigans were overflowing for 6 decades, and you still don't have the truth. You still don't have the Joe and Eddie's files, even though the JFK records have been released. So, what kind of a game are we talking about? So either if you're in the truth-telling business and you don't tell the truth, get out of the business. Don't even pretend that there are congressional committees. Shut them down. So that's the way I look at it. And they have an opportunity there. But May 12th, that thing that's coming up, I think our voices should be heard, that it should not turn into a sham where a bunch of intel agents get to peddle, their pitch for more money.
The consensus out there is that this is a standard irrigation pit. I mean, this has been mercilessly ridiculed and mocked online. And, you really do have to acknowledge here. I mean, yes, Lue did state he cannot vouch for the veracity of the photograph. He didn't take it. This is not vetted. But you really have to think here. This is the second time that he has stepped into something like this. This happened about less than a year ago, with another photograph that was shown not to be an actual UFO. So, you really have to just recognize that this is a time for, you've got to be careful when you're putting evidence out there. This was not vetted. It is questionable evidence. And clearly the skeptics are going to jump all over it. You've got Representatives Luna and Burleson. They're staking political capital on this briefing, which included very significant claims about, recovered non-terrestrial craft, NORAD detection capabilities. We'll get to that. So this distraction, that's really what this looks like it could be, is very likely to overshadow testimonies from other witnesses who are describing important encounters. Tim Gallaudet's one of them, the Admiral. He describes some very well-documented Navy encounters. And so I think, this mistake is going to create exactly the ammunition that skeptics want, which is instead of where the focus should be, which is on the very substantial sensor data, multiple military witnesses, all the scientific analyses presented by other panelists. They're going to jump on this and dismiss the whole thing. The UAP disclosure movement cannot afford basic errors when you're fighting decades of institutional resistance. I guess I'll just leave that there.